Hello, hello, and welcome to Call and Response. That's Open Mike Eagle.
And that's Baron Vaughn. See, I can follow you when you do this
I was
stuff.
trying to trip you up. I
You
really
know, not
was.
not with my own name. You won't. You can trip me up pretty easily, but not with that.
Okay. Well, that's good. That's good. Welcome to Call and Response. This is a good one. I say that like the other ones haven't been good, but I was just saying before we got on air how every single time that we do the show, I'm excited because we have such interesting guests who
Genuinely interesting guest that we're
Yes.
genuinely interested in, which puts us in a unique position.
Exactly. We're not talking with anybody about anything we don't want to be talking to them about. And for lack of a better term, people have come correct. So I'm
Exactly.
so excited. Now, how you doing, Mike? How you doing today?
I don't know yet, honestly. I have no idea yet. I've woken up and I've done my morning routines and I've gotten ready to do the show. I have no idea how I am as an individual at this moment.
Wait,
No clue.
morning routines. You have multiple routines?
Well, I think most of it it just pertains to the time that I have in the morning before we get ready to do this.
How much
Basically,
time do you even have? Like
I
when
get
you
up
wake
pretty
to
early, man. I get up at like
Dude.
7:30, man.
What?
Yeah, I do. I can't help it.
7:30?
I get up at like 7:30. I can't even help it.
I say that like I'm not a parent of two young children.
Exactly. That's it breaks you.
7:30? Surely a time does not exist. I used to think that single-digit morning times were a myth. I used to think they were a real conspiracy when I was a kid, and I was like, "No, the world doesn't exist until I open my eyes to view it," which technically is a sound philosophical concept for a 7-year-old to be thinking.
Yeah, there's
But,
adults that have made whole livings writing books from that same perspective.
exactly, and they're not, and any adult that is good at that is just saying shit a toddler said to them. What if what I think is blue and what you think is blue is totally different? What do you mean, Jamal? Well, I mean, I'm not inside your experience. Is this not true? That is true. And I view the world through my eyes, so I recognize a certain spectrum of colors is blue, but that doesn't mean it's the same spectrum of colors as you. Yet both of us in our individual experiences recognize that color is blue. Anyway, can I have some ice cream?
Oh wow, that was great, but it made me feel like I was on drugs in the middle of it. It was it was intense.
Watching me is kind of like tripping. I think that's why sometimes people there's watching me do stand up. There's laughter, but there's also gasping. There's also people going like, and also sometimes I hear like, whoa, like every now and then I get emotional sounds out of people, and I'm fine with that.
How are you today?
Me, I'm feeling kind of hyper, kind of hype.
Interesting.
A couple of different reasons. It's about the guests that we have today.
Well, that's good.
Yes. We have three fantastic guests. We have Jeremiah Ellison, who is a city council member in Minneapolis. We have Diallo Riddle, the writer and actor, producer, creator of Sherman Showcase and South Side with Bashir Salahuddin. We also have...
Oh, wait, look at him. Look at him,
This
folks.
is why I'm hype.
Yeah, man. This
We
is a
got the-
special one for
We
you.
got the legend Robert Townsend on today. The legend.
man.
You know, Mike, there's not a lot of people that I feel starstruck by. You know what I mean? And I think that you might be similar. Like, you've probably been around famous people. I've been around famous people. I don't really care. Celebrity is weird, you know.
Right.
So all celebrity is that a lot of people like you at once. That's all celebrity is. It's like, hey, a lot of people like you right now. The most people like you at once right now. That's all celebrity is. But some people, regardless of their celebrity, leave true art.
Yeah, and true art
Behind.
that, really impacts individuals.
Exactly.
And, so when it comes to somebody like Robert Townsend, for you and for me, but especially for you, it's not just about, a bunch of people paid attention to this person at a time. It's a different thing. It's about like you've spent a lot of time thinking about this person and their work. And when somebody lives in your mind like that and you get to talk to them, it can be a very intimidating experience.
Absolutely. I remember when we did New Negroes and we got Doom on a track.
Yeah.
And you
Flipped out.
You kind of flipped out, but it was
did.
also like every Doom track you've heard. I mean, you've collaborated with Doom a couple different times, but every single time especially when I listen to you and I know you're on a track with Doom, that's when you bring the heat.
Yeah, I got to show out. I got to show out.
Okay, I'm gonna track with Doom. I'm gonna track with one of my heroes. Got to bring some heat. And
Real.
it's you once said that guy's been in my head for a long time.
Absolutely,
right?
exactly.
And it's true for Robert Townsend. I have been influenced by him in ways that I don't even understand. You know, I'm not trying to be like him, but I follow in his example of trying to be like myself.
Exactly.
That's what Robert Townsend taught me.
But I also think there's and you know, one of the themes of this episode is community.
Yes.
And for me, knowing you personally, community has always been really important to you. And I think that one of the great examples we have of somebody creating community, especially Black community in comedy in history, is when, you know, Robert Townsend really hit the scene, and with movies like Hollywood Shuffle and The Five Heartbeats, and you know, and being a part of like the same community that In Living Color sprang out of. And it's just like, it's one of the most perfect encapsulated moments of Black community and comedy. And so it's really easy to see how that could have a giant influence on you.
Well, absolutely. I mean, and it's like I said, it's the example that I even this, you know, call and response is born out of. Can you hear that?
Yes.
Sound?
Yes,
okay,
yes.
that's my dumb laptop doing dumb stuff.
Sound like it's trying to email you.
Because I once spilled water on it. It's trying to email me now. I never keep my laptop on sound. It's the worst. Anyway, back to what we were talking about. Yeah, I mean, call and response, New Negroes, a lot of things that I have done have always been about creating a community, reaching out to a community, bolstering a community, and sounding off to the community. You know, a long time, the homie David Perdue, Atlanta comic, once asked me, why did I create New Negroes? And I said, to go like this, and see who will respond.
There you go.
You know what I mean? And that's my call. And this is the response. And it's because I'm following an example of somebody like Robert Townsend, who in all of those movies you mentioned, in the TV shows that he's created, in the careers that he's helped bolster up, you know, there's a selflessness and a kind of a rising tide raises all ships that I take from him. I think Diallo Riddle will agree with me, because we're gonna talk to him about that. And I think that he and Bashir do a similar thing. I think that you do a similar thing in hip hop. We try to do a similar thing in hip hop and comedy. It's always like I want to you know, surround myself with people I love, who I know are talented, who I know are capable, that are for some reason or other have been locked out or denied the amount of access that they should have had, you know, a long time ago, usually because Black. But but besides that, you know, obviously people are capable, and I love being able to show that off, to be like, yeah, they've been over here knowing shit, you know, this entire time. What were we about to say, Mike?
It's, you know, beyond even being Black, I know for me as an independent creator, somebody who's not typically I'm not typically doing business with giant corporations funding my efforts. It's usually smaller entities funding my efforts. And because of that, you know, like as an independent artist, I don't survive without community. It just doesn't happen. Like if I don't, you know, like we're going to have Jeremiah Ellison on in a moment, who's from Minneapolis. There's been very, very, very generous and popular independent rappers in Minneapolis forever, who have helped people like me. You know, like you know, when a Brother Ali takes me on tour, or Atmosphere, or you know, like any of these the more visible names, especially in that area, when they reach out and they bring others along, like it is the way that, specifically in my line of work, it's the way you eat. You know what I mean? And then you can kind of pay that forward to others. But you know, it's not just a matter of wanting it around me. It's like specifically the mechanism by which I live as an independent artist. You know, you've got to have community.
Well, I'm going to bring up this first guest, but I want to tell you this really quick story, Mike. I'm trying to remember where I read this. I want to say it was a book called The History of Marriage, possibly, but it was the concept of hunter-gatherer societies, right? So, you know, a lot of people go, oh, you know, they kind of split it into like kind of gender revolution stuff. Men are hunters and women are gatherers, right? There's actually no proof that that is true. Were there hunters and gatherers? Yes. Was it always men and always women? No, of course not. People switched, right? Or changed roles, whatever. Point is that the hunt was very unpredictable. Gathering was the most consistent way of getting food.
Mm-hmm.
But when you hunted and you caught the buck or the cow or the buffalo or whatever the heck you were hunting, and you brought it back to the tribe, who would take the smallest piece and who would take the biggest piece? This is what they always think, right? People go like, oh, I hunted, I deserve the biggest piece. Apparently, that is not what happened. The person who caught the fowl or whatever they were hunting always took the smallest piece.
Really?
Yes. Do you know why?
No.
Because goodwill was currency then. Wow. Goodwill, doing unto others as you would have them do unto you, is how you sustain that tribal community.
Wow.
People would remember that not only did you risk your life, but you took the least. So when I do it,
the most, yeah.
I'm going to do the same.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? I'm going to pay that forward. And that's just kind of a thing that kind of keeps community together, right? So I just kind of want to have that idea up there in the cloud of our brainstorm as we bring on this first guest.
That's powerful, though.
Yeah, that's what I do, Mike. Get powerful. And then I go, yeah, right afterwards to negate it. Okay? I'm ashamed to stand in my power, but this next guest is not ashamed to stand in his power. He is actually an elected official in the city of Minneapolis because he is a city councilman. Please welcome to Call and Response, Jeremiah Ellison. Jeremiah, how you doing, man?
Doing all right. Exhausted, but I'm doing good.
Wow. You got to be exhausted. Repping Minneapolis, specifically the north side. And, we were chatting a little bit before we started the show, and I was telling you how much time I've spent there. And because I spent a lot of time there, I feel like I understand exactly why that ended up being the epicenter of all of the protests that have been happening. And I feel like people around the world might not understand why. And I would love to get your idea or your explanation of why you think it is that community specifically ended up being the epicenter for all of these protests.
Yeah, well, Minneapolis, we've got a lot of good things going for us, right? But we also have some of the steepest disparities of anywhere else in the country. Mm-hmm. Like, meaning that the education outcomes, the financial outcomes between Black folks and white folks is really, really stark. And they're similar for indigenous communities here, other immigrant communities here. And so I think that when you've got a place of abundance like Minneapolis, yet there's this stark disparity between who gets to benefit from that abundance. Lay on top of that, unemployment from coronavirus and, all the stuff that's going on. And then obviously ignite that with another murder from the police, from the state. I think you were bound to see that anxiety that's really always there, mm-hmm. bubble to the surface. But I'd be interested in your take though.
Well, if I can give it to you quickly, to me, I've known Minneapolis as a place of very strong community. And the way that always translated to me was that Minneapolis always supported its own hip hop artists in a way that I never saw in any other city, where you're what you would call quote unquote underground, not mainstream artists, where, in that case, a collective like Doomtree or Rhymesayers, they are celebrated by the citizens of Minneapolis in a way that typically cities don't necessarily pay as much attention to their homegrown artists and put them up the same way. And so starting with that baseline sense of community and then seeing the history of how that community reacts when Philando Castile is murdered or Jamar Clark is murdered, there's less of a toleration for the police to take the lives of somebody in the community there than I've seen in other places.
Yeah, that feels accurate. That feels very accurate. You've been paying attention when you come here.
I do.
I have not been to Minneapolis as much as you, I think, Mike. But I've been there a couple different times, and I know a lot of people from Minneapolis. Apparently, I got some family in Minneapolis as well. My uncle, what's up, Tony? And and we just talked to Ernie Hudson on the show the other day, who is in Minneapolis right now as well, and has had a long relationship with that city. But every time I go there, I do feel that sense of community. There is something about Minneapolis where I'm like, there is a pride, you know, and I've known a lot of Minnesotans, but of course, a lot of people from Minneapolis. I had a friend that used to call it the Minneapple, and just like, and people from different generations, you know, that have, they're so proud, you know, of Minneapolis and what Minneapolis has created and what it offers. When I go there for stand up, man, the stand up community in Minneapolis is tight, and they support each other. And Acme Comedy Club is one of the best comedy clubs in the country. I feel really bad that it's closed right now, but I didn't want to say that just because that's my community. Okay, everybody, calm down. So, speaking of community, kind of wanted to get into a couple of deep things. Obviously, you know, we're familiar with the events of the horrible murder of George Floyd, and what has happened after that. So I kind of want to, I guess, get it from your perspective, you know, in a sense, like, you know, when people say like, oh, what were you doing when X, Y, and Z happened? So what was Jeremiah Ellison doing when he heard about these events?
You know, I actually saw a friend post the video online, and this was the day it happened. And so I think folks were really like not sure what to make of it, because typically when you see these kinds of murders, it's by gun, right? This was 9-minute torture, slow death. I mean, it was grisly, it was awful. But I think initially, you know, things didn't spark off the day it happened because people were still kind of wrapping their minds around what occurred. I'll tell you, I saw the video. A friend posted it. I texted that friend being like, hey, you know, let me know if you have any context. And I like around like what I'm looking at here. I don't think they got back to me. And so I think I, you know, was a little bit at a loss. The next morning, I got a call. And it's funny because I was actually recounting this with the mayor. We were on the phone a couple days ago, and we both got bad intel the morning after it happened. We were both told that he wasn't dead.
Whoa.
What?
Yes. I had seen the video. I knew, I was like, that doesn't sound right. That doesn't feel right. And obviously it took less than an hour for that to be corrected, but that's what we were told. And I'm like, who in our department just told that lie?
So so the lie originated with the police somehow.
Yes. Right.
Of course.
And I was like, this is wild. And so, I mean, and you saw that kind of thing, right? Like, it's been reported now that the initial that coming out of our department's communications, which, you know, communications departments are inherently there to run interference, but you know, the communications department put out like, you know, the cause of death is faulty. They were kind of the original source of that, and so
right.
You know, so obviously, you know, I was getting this bad intel. I was like, okay, this isn't. My activist instinct sort of kicked in, and I'm like, I just need to go to the site. I just need to go where it happened because I know people are going to be there. I know people are going to, you know, I know that we've still got coronavirus happening. You know, so I think I told my staff to go out and buy, you know, like 250 masks because I wasn't sure, and I was like, I just want to have 250 masks on deck so I can hand them out at the vigil, and so that's kind of what my day was like, kind of the night it happened and the day after, and then obviously the night after is when things started to really bubble over.
You know, you said a second ago when you got that news and you got that disinformation, your activist instinct kind of activated, and you're in a unique position being somebody who comes from the activist world and you know, joins, you know, electoral politics, becomes an elected official.
Yeah.
So what has it been like, you know, being in the epicenter of that kind of feeling where I'm sure your activist instinct is to probably throw the first bottle. You know what I mean? When you still have a different responsibility and are looked at in a different way as an elected official, how are you able to balance it?
Yeah. I mean, I think that it's a work in progress. It's a constant work in progress. You know, one of the things that I always resented about, you know, folks in office, say for a couple of people, obviously I think my dad's great, I'm biased, but say for a couple of folks, you know, I've always really resented the fact that elected officials have always seemed so fragile when they come under criticism. And so I've like made it my mission. I'm like, you know what? I don't care what the disagreement is. I don't care if somebody cusses me out. I don't care what it is. I'm going to make it impossible to burn a bridge with me. Right? I just got to take that criticism because I got to understand that on some level, it's not personal, that I hold a position of power and that people expect answers and a response. Right? And so I try to make sure that that is front and center for me as I get ready to go serve, that I'm not fragile when people come to me with their criticisms and their critiques. I think the other thing is that, my first instinct now is if I can get answers and if I can affect, a different outcome, then I got to do that first. I owe it to the people I represent to do that first. But I also have to keep in mind that I'm getting elected. I'm 2 years into a system that has worked one way for 150 years, right, in Minneapolis, right? And that sometimes the system's going to rebel even against me. It's going to push back against, the ways in which I'm trying to hold it accountable. And then when that happens, when I'm ostracized within the system that I'm trying to affect, then it's time to kind of go back into activist mode and not just kind of be complicit in how the system is acting.
You had mentioned just briefly your father there, so I wanted to just put a pin in that because it relates to the question I'm going to ask. Your father, of course, is Keith Ellison, who's the Attorney General of Minnesota, also served as a congressman a couple years ago. So you grew up in a house with a father who has had experience in politics. You were talking about your activist roots. When you signed on, I was actually really surprised to see you had cut your dreads. So I was kind of like, oh, he got his dreads. Which to me, anybody I know who's ever had dreads, especially as long as yours were, that always seems like it's very spiritual.
It's a big moment.
It's a big moment. It's a different, you're becoming, it's almost like you're becoming somebody new. Shedding a skin. And I guess that's what I'm talking about is that this is what I'm talking about, the genesis of Jeremiah Ellison, right? Yeah. So it's kind of like considering all of those things and what you said before we actually got on air, which is, why did I run? You know what I mean? When you ask yourself that question, considering all the things that I've said, your father, your activist roots, your longer roots when you had dreads, what kind of answers do you come up with when you ask yourself that question? Yeah, well, I think the thing that I really like to keep in focus is there's a lot of different sort of colloquial terms for an elected official, right? Like politician is one of them, but the one that I always land on is public servant, right? And that is the term that I most resonate with when I think about what my job is, right? It's the service. And, there have been times where, this was a big thing because on my campaign, when I ran, obviously I have access to people who know how to run campaigns, but, I told my dad, I'm like, hey, look, I got a different way I want to run my campaign. And so I actually employed a lot of friends, a lot of folks who really don't really mess with electoral politics, right? But they say, okay, well, we believe in you, and so we're gonna wade into this, and we're gonna see what this is about. And I remember one time where I was having a campaign meeting, and I had a mix of folks, right? I had some folks who have been doing campaigns for a long time. I had folks who I was bringing in from my activist circles, and there was this question from a lot of the folks who have been a part of a lot of political campaigns, where they were like, are you willing to do anything to win? And my answer was no. I said, we've got our premise, we've got our theory of change. And and I think we can win on that. And if we lose on that, then the ward wasn't really ready for it. The district wasn't really ready for it. And we just got to be okay to lose on our premise. And they walked away from the campaign.
They said, I can't, you're not serious if you're not willing to do anything to win. That was the message I got from a handful of folks who are maybe a little bit more entrenched in the political machine. I like to think we've proven them wrong, that I am serious, even if I'm not willing to do quote unquote anything to win. But that was one of those points of tension. I like to think of that when I serve. It's not my job to keep this job no matter what, right? I've got to continue to govern on my premise of change, on my theory of change, and if I lose, I lose, and I just got to be willing to live with that. But I'll tell you what, if I made a decision that I felt like was wrong, for the sake of maintaining my position of power, and then I lost anyway, how do you live with yourself, right? To me, I'd rather lose on my premise than make too many concessions. So that's where I like to try to keep things, and it makes things a little simpler for me.
You just articulated my problem with most politicians, that the obsession with winning by any means trumps who it is that they're trying to serve.
Absolutely.
With activism being at your core, naturally your politics are going to be a little bit more progressive than the establishment, and what people might be used to. But it seems as if the environment there is really ripe for it. And, one of the pieces of evidence we can see for that is that you all have voted to successfully dismantle the police force in Minneapolis. And from your perspective, just please tell us all how that went down.
Yes.
We haven't voted yet. We made a commitment. We made a public commitment. And I think we're going to meet that commitment. But there's going to be some steps, right? The police all across the country have basically a monopoly on safety, right? And people want to feel safe. The problem is that, and this is the reason we have antitrust laws when it comes to big business, although they don't always work. But when somebody has a monopoly on a product, on an outcome, that means that they have a lot of power in deciding how that gets distributed, who gets what, right? And the police have played that role. And I think what you've seen in the past is that, at least in our department, you've seen the police maybe not out and out say, but they have insinuated that if you're too vocal about calls for accountability, that they are going to basically strike on safety. They're not going to provide safety. And so I think that is. And right now, we can't prove this because it's been too short of an amount of time. But there's a big question about whether the police are doing a work slow now, right? And whether they're kind of relinquishing their duty to keep people safe now. I think that only proves the need for us to no longer give police a monopoly on safety, right? Do we need to have a response for example, an active shooter situation? Absolutely. As we create this new system? Absolutely. But let's be honest, that's not mostly what we're dealing with. Mostly what we're dealing with are, guys, for example, who might be trying to buy groceries with a fake $20 bill, right? And we saw that in the case of George Floyd. Did we need to have 4 guns present in that situation? Did we need anyone with use of force training, right, present in that situation? The answer is obviously no. We had a situation last year where a guy was threatening to kill himself. He was having a mental health crisis, and the police showed up, and because he had a knife on him, they shot and killed him. Is that the right way? Is that keeping people safe? Killing people who are threatening suicide? I think that's not the way that we should be keeping the public safe. I have real questions about whether or not that's effective or the best way to go about it. I think the answer is no. And so I think that what we want to do as a council is we want to break down all of what the police do and ask and take a real inventory of whether or not force, a gun, whatever is needed. Because in most of what they do, they're not responding to violent calls, right? And so right now, the next few steps, aside from making the commitment to do so, we passed a resolution sort of codifying that commitment. right now we're trying to pursue a charter change. For the folks that don't know, the charter is basically like the local constitution. In our charter, we say that we have to have it. We force ourselves to have a police department. And so if we want to do anything that isn't the police, we first got to change that. We have to change that from police to the Department of Public Safety, which is what we're going to do. Because if the bottle's only labeled police, then only police can go in it. If it's called public safety, then we can put a lot more in it. And then police don't necessarily have to go into that bucket. So that's our next step. From there, we want to engage the public to say, what are all the ways in which you expect to be kept safe? And then we've got to have a response to that. So that's sort of our trajectory as of right now.
What a novel idea, asking the public, asking the communities what they think. Weird. Yeah, we had the honor of having Melina Abdullah, who works with Black Lives Matter LA. She's a professor of Pan-African Studies here in LA as well, who has been instrumental in helping some of that happen here in LA as well. She and a council member named Herb Wesson have put forward some the people's budget and just kind of trying to figure out, and their thing is creating a system of people who respond instead of the police. You know, like if someone's having a mental health crisis, send a mental health professional. If somebody's having, basically like that, like we're sending police to do things that police shouldn't be doing, right?
Yeah.
So considering that, I'm curious as to where else you might be looking, where you're looking at for models, and if there are any places, whether it be in the country or the world, that you're kind of studying to get ideas from.
Yeah, well, I've got kind of two tiers to that. I think a lot of folks have talked about Camden, New Jersey, which is where I think the only place where they've kind of completely dismantled their police department. I'd say, so we're looking at Camden in terms of, okay, what did they do in order to sort of break apart this dysfunctional department? But then on the results side, Camden just kind of ended up creating a new police unit, which is not what we're looking to do. So we want to figure out how did they, dismantle their force, but we're not necessarily looking to just piece a new force back together again. So for that, we're looking internally somewhat. We have a few programs, right? Like we have the Office of Violence Prevention, which is where we have our Gang Violence Intervention Unit, which is this non-police unit that works with guys who are involved in that lifestyle and works with them to figure out what their needs are in order for them to exit that lifestyle. It's been actually really successful, more successful than just sort of arrest and punish and prosecute in reducing violence, that specific type of violence. But these guys have like a shoestring budget, right? They definitely don't have $193 million, which is what our police force has. There's also another program at the county that we partner with. They're our mental health response team. So we want to be able to expand that. Again, they operate on a shoestring budget. I think they only work during office hours. So if you're having a mental health crisis after 8 p.m., good luck, right? You're getting the police. And so expanding that to make sure that it can be a 24-hour service and we can actually deploy people in a robust way, I think is really important. Otherwise, there are experts at places like John Jay College that come in and work with cities on violence prevention. And we certainly want to be in touch with all of those national experts to figure out, all right, how do we make this happen?
I'm going to ask the reverse of that question. Because, I think Baron's question was to, where are you all paying attention to places to get lessons that you could bring into the fight that you're currently fighting? I'm curious as to, there's a lot of cities around the country that are, fed up with the way that they have been policed.
Yep.
And they might not be in environments that are as potentially politically progressive as yours is. And I'm wondering if there's any lessons that we can take from the way that you all are changing things in Minneapolis. Like, what lessons can we take out of that to the national stage to inspire communities where the path isn't so clear?
Yeah. I think, the state plays a big role in whether or not you have to have police officers, right? And so, like right now, the state legislature, at the state capitol, is trying to figure out some legislation that will essentially try to block what we're doing. We can't focus on that. We can't necessarily affect that. So we're just going to keep on our mission and hope that those efforts are unsuccessful, and then we're just going to keep doing what we're doing here. But one thing that I felt like was really why we obsessed over the charter, or why we decided to start with the charter, is because we can blame the state for making us do things all day, but the charter was like, in what ways are we in our own way, right? We're mandating ourselves to have a police force, and is that what we should be doing? And so those are the questions that we were trying to figure out: is in what ways are we in our own way? And I think that also the path towards, defunding your police force, reducing them, is not about what you can affirm in the negative, right? Let's just get rid of the police. If you want to get public support, I think you have to talk more about what you're going to do in the affirmative. That's what's going to win over the public. I've got a lot of constituents, working class Black folks, who sort of look at me and say,
I'm sorry, hey, Jeremiah, I'm sorry to interrupt you. Speaking of working class Black folks, it seems that our team over at Funny or Die has to leave. It seems like there's a fire alarm situation, so we need to kind of we need to take a break and make sure that our people are safe. We'll be back. I don't know. We'll send out some sort of message about what's going to happen, everybody. But for now,
but thank you. If we don't get a chance to get you back, just want to say thanks to you.
Yeah, yes. Absolutely. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Jeremiah.
Hey.
Yes. What happened?
What happened, something. I don't know if it really caught on fire, but the building where they running all of our technical stuff through, so we can reach y'all, even though we at different houses. An alarm there went off that made people at least think that something was on fire, and so they all had to get up and leave, which meant we had to stop.
Which means we had to stop. But now we're back. We're back, and we're blacker than ever.
Yeah, I'm blacker for sure. I'm like
bigger and blacker.
Yeah, I think I'm the same size, but I'm 2.5% blacker.
2.5% blacker. Unfortunately, we had to leave in the middle of Jeremiah Ellison's interview. We were wrapping up, but we had a couple more questions and a little bit more time with him. But of course, he's a busy man.
Yeah, absolutely.
He had to go.
So unceremoniously, we had to bid him
yes.
adieu. But we definitely want to say thanks again to Jeremiah Ellison. We appreciate the work that he's doing and how he took some time out of that crazy schedule to come here and chat with us for a bit.
Exactly. And this next gentleman coming to the stage, quote unquote stage, also has a very busy schedule. If you don't know, you better ask somebody. He's got 2 shows on the air right now, and he just don't care. Sherman Show, Case and Southside 2. Who am I talking about? Diallo.
Well, I thought you were going to go Diallo.
Oh, you know what? I thought Diallo coming.
Yeah,
from a mile away. I was like, he's not about to say Diallo.
But I did.
He did.
But I did.
And it makes it all the better. I appreciate it, man. Thank you for having me here, man. It's an honor and a privilege. Thank you.
Yes, as it is for me. Obviously, I'm a big fan of yours. I'm a fan of all the different shows that you have worked on and acted in, by yourself and also with your writing partner, Bashir.
Yeah.
So we're talking about the power of community right now, right? Kind of. But I kind of wanted to talk to you a little bit about what that means to you, especially in the genesis of your career. If I'm correct, I believe you and Bashir met at Harvard. Am I correct? So
tight-knit community.
Black people at Harvard. Yes,
all 6 of y'all, huh?
The name General Custer comes to mind. They're surrounded on all sides.
It's kind of crazy how many Black people I knew that went to Harvard. I actually one time I started following Alexis Wilkinson, who was the first Black female editor-in-chief of Lampoon when she was at Harvard.
Oh, that's dope. It's also sad that there are people who are our age who are still the first Black anything at Harvard.
Oh, she's way younger than us, Diallo.
That's what I'm saying, man. It's like, we did a song on Sherman Showcase, Black Kids of the White School, which was obviously based in part on our experiences at a HWCU. And
ain't nobody wearing that sweatshirt.
One of the lyrics I like the most is "With a dude who integrated your school is still alive." It's the thing.
Oh.
It's the thing.
Well, and that's what I mean. You kind of met at Harvard. You had a tight knit community, and you and Bashir have not only known each other for a long time and worked together.
Lifetime.
But I feel like both of you, even individually, have done a lot of work to kind of create this community of comedians, writers, producers, and actors. A lot of which we get to see on both Southside and Sherman Showcase.
Well, okay, so the really quick answer to that is that Bashir and I both come from very large families. Like I'm one of 6, he's one of 8.
Damn.
I'm usually the person who like has the weirdo parents who have all the kids, but somehow he had to one up me. What I would say about the way that relates to the genesis of not just Southside and Sherman Showcase, but almost everything we do, is when we get in the writer's room. We started off. He was actually an actor at Harvard, and I was a nonfiction writer, like a serious like Kennedy School politics writer when we met. But I say all that to say that our career took off as writers primarily. And to this day, our writer's room always has a lot of black people in it, a lot of men and women, but just a lot of black people. And that's really our attempt to imitate where we got our true comedic roots, which is the black dinner table. If you're at the black dinner table at a large table full of black people, everybody's trying to be funny. I'm one of 6. My parents were still married, so that means there are 8 black people at the table all trying to be the funniest. Everybody's competing, everybody's trying to get the best joke. And, at Bashir's table is 2 more than that. So, our writers' rooms are always an attempt to try to mimic that, because we feel like that's where the best material, the best dialogue, just a whole bunch of, it's not all black, we always have our minority hire. I guess it's our majority hire. I don't know.
Yeah, either way, it works.
By the way, that dude earned his spot. You gotta be real funny to be. I digress. What I'm saying is that that's where our best material comes from. So if I'm looking at Will Miles or Langston Kerman or some of our Sherman Showcase writers, Zuri Salahuddin. We hire a lot of family members. That's not nepotism. That's just because we come from some funny people. My nephew does animation on Sherman's, and Bashir's brother's the star of Southside. So we keep it in the family, not because we're trying to increase the pot, but because we feel like the apples don't fall that far from the tree, and we have a lot of funny people who make us laugh, and now they're making America laugh.
I mean, and that's the important thing, right? This whole episode is about community, and what you just said is perfectly exemplary of community, bringing in the people around you to work on what you're making. And like you said, you're used to a lot of activity, from big dinner tables to 2 writers' rooms full of people competing with each other to be entertaining. So one thing we like to ask all our homies that come through and chat with us is, if you're used to all of that activity, what has it been like for the past few months where you've had to like sit still for a while? What's it been like?
What's crazy is because of Zoom, I feel like I'm just as busy. In some ways I'm busier because there's no line in the sand between like when I'm at work and when I'm a dad of three kids. So like there's in some ways it's its own unique stress. I am happy that I'm not just an actor, but also a member of the Writers Guild, because I don't know what actors are doing right now. That's got to be hella scary. Like in terms of like, when do we get back? And I know they're going to start shooting reality first. Like, I think I've always said that everybody should be a writer. Like if you're an actor, you really should be a writer, because you can write the parts that Hollywood's not writing for you. And
Absolutely.
you get them shot on your own. That's where Issa started. That's where we started. We all started at YouTube, at the gates of YouTube. And even if not that many people are watching, it's like your own film school. You'll learn how, you know what, I'm funnier when I'm doing this, and camera's better when it's here. And it's like a little miniature film school. So you can't ever do enough just stuff on your own. I feel like people are going to emerge from this time better, stronger, faster, just for having done it. Like, hell, all of us now have done like lighting and grip work,
Seriously.
Not well, but we understand what those other guys are doing, and if anything, we probably appreciate them more.
That's what I've been saying that so much. It's like now everybody knows what a grip is and a gap is, why sound is important. It's like, yeah, all these people matter.
I need a makeup kit. Yeah,
I'm looking at my background like, art direction needs some help.
Can we clean up those
yeah, exactly. Like, this is messy. Can I say one thing about Community though, especially as it relates to Southside? You know, that's a show that we did. We not only went to Chicago and did most of the casting out of Chicago, but we did most of the casting out of the South Side of Chicago. Like, it meant something to us if the actor had some South Side roots. And in a few cases, there would be people who, and I don't want to encourage this, but there were a couple of people who would literally just come up to us, talk to us while we were on set, and we were like, you know what? Let's make that dude the bus driver because he made us. You know what I'm saying? Like, this could be a very bad precedent to even let people know it exists.
Yeah,
but
good thing you did.
Because people come up like, "Hey, brother, like I need to be in this scene. You know what the scene is missing? Me." You know, like, I could be encouraging that, but I think about that bus driver. Like, he was the actual bus driver for a scene when we were on a bus, and he was making us laugh, and so we had him on camera for a few seconds. You know what I'm saying? Like, we really wanted that show to reflect the community. We didn't want it to be staffed and stocked with everybody. No diss to anybody working in Hollywood, but we just didn't want you to see all the familiar faces. So if you're Lil Rel, come on in because you're from he's from the West Side, but you know, like that's the homie. You know,
Chicago, yeah,
like it's and there's a unique line between what the West Side. There's a subtle line between the West Side and the South Side, but it wasn't like he came through like on some, you know, I'm from, you know, Buffalo Grove. You know what I mean? You know, that meant a lot to us. So,
but you know, as a South Sider, I got to say it feels very authentic.
Thank you.
It really does. It reflects the neighborhood I grew up in, and you don't often see that on the screen.
And you need to see that more because there are politicians who demagogue it. I'm me and the director Michael Blyden. We're the only people with no childhood roots in the South Side of Chicago. And literally from the writers to the people you see on screen, everybody's from the South Side. You know. And by the way, when we were doing Brothers in Atlanta, the famed project that we had at HBO for 4 years.
I remember it.
That they killed brutally.
For it.
Mask off. They looked us in the eye and said no. You know, like that was similar. Like I had some of my boys from high school, you know, from the SWATs, and I had, you know, just a really good group of Atlanta actors ready to go. You know, the only person there who wasn't from Atlanta was probably Bashir and Brescia Webb, who, by the way, I had no idea that years later I'd end up on a show with Brescia Webb. But first time I met her, I cast her as, you know, my girlfriend on Brothers in Atlanta. Yeah,
Brescia's the homie. She's fantastic. Great. She's been working a lot out there. So please, if you are unfamiliar with Brescia, check her out.
Nobody's unfamiliar with Brescia.
I know.
Everybody. Even if you don't know her name, you've seen her.
You've seen her. She works, and she's very good.
And she's very nice. I mean, like I've had the pleasure of working with just some nice people. And Bashir and I, we've worked on those shows and on those sets where somebody is really not cool, or you get that diva action happening, or you know, maybe we've worked places that weren't cool. And so we always said every place that we run, we're going to make sure that shit is really, really cool. Like,
yeah, that's fantastic. I mean, that's the same philosophy that Mike and I have. And, you know, I have one last question to ask you. Do you have another question for Mike?
Nah, go for it, dude.
I have one last question to ask you. It pertains to Sherman Showcase.
Yes.
And our next guest.
Oh, yeah.
So when Mike and I did the New Negroes, which, you know, we love and we are happy and we're proud of. You know, we pitched it around, obviously, and a show that I came back to a lot, that I had mentioned a lot. And you started, when Sherman Showcase came out, there was a couple interviews with you, and both of us have a very strong affinity for Robert Townsend Partners in Crime.
Yep.
Now, I read what you had to say about it in Vulture, and I literally was throwing my arms up going like, I literally say this to everyone I meet in a room by myself. And I was, just by myself. And it's like, that's right, fan. You know it, coat. You know, whatever was around me. That's my improv. That's my yes-anding training. So I wanted to hear from you because the spirit of Partners in Crime, which was very much community centric, very much about showing multiple generations of comedians in one place, which was always my mission about New Negroes. And I guess I kind of wanted to hear about that show's influence on you and how it influenced you to create Sherman Showcase in the way that you guys have done it.
Well, I want to talk about that. I also know that this is a live stream, so we can't get deep into detail. But look, we were both at Comedy Central at the same time. At some point, I want to talk to you brothers about that.
We gotta talk way offline.
Comedy Central.
Oh, my goodness.
Gonna make me
and I don't want anybody to get in trouble. So let's just sidebar when this gets over, because like I hear things, because we're still a Comedy Central show, and I hear things. I hear things about the future direction of Comedy Central.
Yes, well, it's unlike anything.
I want to talk to somebody about it. I know this is almost like a tease to the people who are watching this, but like that's the conversation that we really want to have on camera, but we know we can't have on camera. So let's talk about that sometime.
Yeah, me and you, Diallo. Mike can be there too.
We'll talk.
No, I got things to say.
Yeah, brother, I got things I want to say.
Yes.
And we still got business, so let's just talk about Sherman Showcase. Such a tease about Sherman Showcase. Look, man, we loved. Bashir and I always wanted to do a sketch comedy thing. That's how we ended up at Jimmy Fallon.
Whose plane is that?
It's the Ghetto Bird.
Oh, okay.
Sorry about that.
No problem.
I'm in Sherman Oaks. They everywhere now.
Damn, everything Sherman.
The suburb bird. Suburb bird. We always wanted to do a sketch comedy show. And at this point, I feel like, there's so many good ones with that DNA, from the New Negroes to Astronomy Club to Black Lady Sketch Show and Sherman Showcase. And you will learn that it's not always the material. A lot of times it's who you sell the project to. Mm-hmm. And that's the real talk. Like, I always hear people like, man, I want to get the show on the air. And I'm like, be careful who you get the show on the air with.
Yes.
Bashir and I have benefited from that in the last 2 years, but we definitely were hurt by it for 4 years continuous at HBO under a different administration at HBO. You can try your damn hardest. You can end up at a network and end up with the wrong time slot, and it sucks. What I would say is that when I watched Robert Townsend's Partners in Crime back in the old days of cable, what I saw was like the jokes that black people make when we're free to make them. You know what I mean? I did not see the unseen hand of some, non-black creative executive guiding Robert Townsend and his friends. No, I saw Robert and Keenan and all these people who went, and David Allen Greer, and all these people who went on to have great careers, having fun with each other, making the jokes you could tell made them laugh.
Yeah.
And we always said that's what we wanted with Sherman Showcase, was to be a show that, you could enjoy it, but you could also just let the creators create. And I'm very grateful to AMC and IFC for giving us that platform, because we could have taken it. There were other places we wanted to take it, to be honest.
Yeah.
And I look and see what they've done with some of the other black creator friends of mine, and I'm like, thank God we didn't end up over there, because at the time that looked like a good look, and I'm really glad that we didn't end up there. So some of it is just knowing that you kind of have to keep your eyes open and sort of be like, I like, Partners in Crime, or, I like Documentary Now. You just pay attention to the people who are taking risks and doing the kind of material that you want to do. And then that's the place where you got to take your material, because again, you could have a great idea, great writing, great cast, and they put no promotion behind it. Or,
they put the wrong promotion behind it.
Promotion behind it. And your own family's like, hey, can I check out your show on Netflix? And you're like, it's not on Netflix. That kind of stuff happens all the time. So you really got to get in bed with the right partners. Partners in Crime had a huge effect on me. Because, again, it made me laugh in a way that really only those Eddie Murphy sketches on SNL made our family laugh like that. Those were the only other sketches where me, my mom, my dad, we all be crying, thinking it was so funny. The bold, the black, the beautiful. It had a huge effect on us as kids. And I think that, one day there might be somebody talking about Sherman Showcase in the same way. I could only be so lucky. I owe Robert Townsend so much.
Right.
Well, Diallo, I think that will definitely happen. I think Sherman Showcase is a triumph, as is Southside. I I think that you and Bashir have done so much interesting stuff, and you've definitely made an impact, because that's kind of how I look at it. Like, even New Negroes, you know, other stuff that I've done in the past, Awkward Comedy Show, you know, with other friends and stuff like that. You never know who's going to be touched by the work that you create. All you can take account in is creating work that you like, and that feels like it's you know, and feels like you're being yourself.
And
so,
also feels like it's bigger than you, you know, and I think that's a good thing that we've attempted to do with New Negroes, and is very apparent with Sherman Showcase and Southside, is that it's not just about Diallo and Bashir. It's about these worlds that they belong in, that they're putting on screen.
Yes, and I think that that's in the tradition of Mr. Robert Townsend. I think that we're in that tradition. Any last thing you want to say, Diallo? You want to shout anybody out? Anybody that you like, that you're interested in, that you're watching, that you just want to, you know, it could be music, it could be movies, TV, books, comic books.
We got a lot.
Skateboard brand. It could be bow tie designers.
Bow tie. I do like my Ferrucci bow tie. I will say this. I should probably mention that the soundtrack for Sherman Showcase is on Mad Decent, which is a Diplo's label. You know, they're another crew that basically said, look, you don't even make what's traditionally Diplo's type of music, but we like it a lot. We like you and Fonte, from Little Brother, Viceroy, our DJ, collective, and the Knox. You know, like that's on Mad Decent. Check out the music; it means something. Check out the Sherman Showcase Black History Month special. It's available on IFC at AMC.com. When we made it, we had no idea how timely it would be. But, you know, but I say all that just to say the people I want to give a shout out to right now are Will Miles, Langston Kerman, Alicia Cowan, Sultan Salahuddin. I'm going to forget somebody now. I'm trying to name all the wonderful writers. Bennett Walsh, Bennett Weber. I'm trying to name all the wonderful writers that we have. Chauncey B. Ragland, Washington. All the wonderful writers we have on Sherman Showcase and Southside, because Zuri Salahuddin, because without them, you know, it wouldn't be nothing. Evan Williams and Emily Goldwyn. Those are my people and everything. Chandra Russell. Oh my gosh, Chandra Russell. This is why you should never try and do this in real time. You can leave out the wrong person.
I know. I'm thinking of people that you haven't said yet. So I think I got both rooms. You know,
said
one name that you didn't.
But there are people like Akila Green.
Okay.
And you know, who and Demi Adijabogwe, who like we've worked with on some recent stuff that hasn't come out yet. I salute to my wonderful Black writers and non-Black writers who we work with. They're special. They work hard. We work them hard. We check every joke 3 times, and hopefully it comes out good. That's what I want.
Well, thank you very much, Diallo.
Thank you, Diallo. Thanks for giving us some time, man. We appreciate you in the spirit of the community and everything, you know, that y'all do.
It takes a village to write these scripts, man, for sure.
Indeed it does. Diallo Riddle, everybody, watch all of the things that he has ever participated in. And things that he probably hasn't participated in, but make you go, you know what? I bet Diallo fucks with this. Just go and do it. Go do it, and beware his brother Tom. So
my son is my father's middle name and my son's name. So there you go.
Oh no, you got some Tom.
I'm a Harry Potter fan. I know
why. I know I'm dropping that right now.
All right.
Okay, so we're going to take no breaks.
No, we got to keep pushing. We got to push on.
We got to keep pushing because we have a fantastic guest coming up right now. We were just talking about, me and Diallo were just talking about his show, Partners in Crime. I used to love this show. I still love the damn show.
Yeah.
It was, like I said, I got to see all these comedians in one place. Not only the person who created and hosted the show, but also people like John Witherspoon, may he rest in peace. People like Robin Harris, may he rest in peace.
Right, absolutely.
I saw, who else did I see on there? LaWanda Page, Paul Mooney, all of the Wayneses, Sean, Marlon, Keenan Ivory, Anna Marie Johnson, just all of these people who this man worked with. And he had a crew at the end of his first film. The end of it is a old-fashioned sort of credit roll where he very specially features every single person in the damn movie because they were all working. They were all working actors. And he's just like, hey, did you like what you saw? Hire us, bitch. So here's the face, here's the name. And all those people have had very interesting, very long careers. This person is a hero. I said there's only a few people that I would get starstruck by, right? I'm trying to be chill. I'm going to tell you who these people are right now. He's one of 3 people for me off the top of my head that I'll get weak in the knees around, right? One's dead, okay? British playwright Harold Pinter. He gone.
Wow.
Steve Martin. And our next guest, Robert Townsend. Please welcome Robert Townsend to the show.
We got a clip
everybody.
to roll, I believe, to lead in.
Oh, see, I'm already too excited. Just show the damn clip first.
Well, Meteor Man, I play a superhero. We come out August 6th. It's an incredible movie because one, it's a human superhero. You see superheroes that can fly, but I think what drives this real character is the heart of the character.
Here he is.
Yeah, look
from
at
the
us.
film Soldier Story, Mr. Robert Townsend.
Hey guys, how you guys doing, man?
Doing
Thank
great,
you.
man. So honored and grateful to have you here on the program.
Yeah, Mike, I'm going to let you ask a question because I won't shut up if I start.
Well, okay. There's something I'm particularly fascinated with, given everything that's going on right now. I'm fascinated with the idea of what it must have been like to been making films here in the community that you were surrounded by in '92 around the time of the LA rebellion. I'm fascinated by what that environment must have been like to create in, and I wonder if you have any insights you can share about working in LA on the kind of work you were doing at that time.
You know what's really funny is that I remember we were shooting Meteor Man, and
Yes.
This is when they had the verdict came out about Rodney King, and the whole city started to burn. And we were shooting, and all of a sudden we were downtown shooting the hospital scene with LaWanda Page, and I'm looking through walls and seeing people's clothes and all of that, and then
Yeah.
the city was on fire. And I just remember, we were in the middle of our day, and then I was like, we got to wrap. And the crew, one half of the crew is black, the other half is white. And then we saw Reginald Denny get pulled out of the car. And I just remember in that moment, I was like, it's a wrap. Everybody go home. And I could see my crew, the white, crew members were like, and I said, get home safe, and then everybody was like, hey man, I'll drive with you, make sure you get, because it was a crazy time, and so when I, look at, George Floyd and all the, action that's been going on and all the protests and all that stuff, which is beautiful, but it reminded me of that time.
Well, you mentioned the film Meteor Man, which I do want to talk about. I call them the Holy Trinity, is what I call them. Hollywood Shuffle, The Five Heartbeats, and Meteor Man. All very different films, but if there's one unifying theme, I guess, that would tie them all together, it's about having a voice, and it's about being able to speak for oneself. I think that's and being able to defend oneself, stand up for what you believe in. I guess that would be the one thing that combines all of those things, and Hollywood Shuffle would be as articulate as it'd be as clear as there's always a job at the post office, you can be okay and not have to do all this. And then Five Heartbeats, I would say, it's about Duck being very I'm talking about these things because they're so fresh in my mind. I'm so sorry. Duck is very, he's defensive of his music, and also there's a family thing there with his brother, right? And then Meteor Man is sort of about community policing. That's kind of what Meteor Man is about, and it's about having the strength and authority to defend one's neighborhood and no longer giving in to fear, I guess is what I'm saying. So I guess I'm curious as to, because I think that you were ahead of your time with a lot of these films. With Meteor Man in specific, though, I guess I always want to ask people, that very classic artsy question, like if there was a question that that film was the answer to. What was the question? And what do you think about the model of Meteor Man in terms of what people are thinking about today in terms of policing and being afraid of the law in their neighborhoods?
Well, you know, with all my movies, I plant seeds. It's a Trojan horse. You know, there's other things going on. Like the 5 Heartbeats was really, I wanted to create images of Black men that we had never seen before. And I used the backdrop of music, 5 guys, but 5 different personalities, so that you can say, oh, I identify with Duck. I identify with JT. Oh, I'm Eddie Kane. Oh, I'm Choir Boy. That, you know, when we think about men of color, we always had the stereotypes of being the hood or the, you know, and I wanted to share something like that with Meteor Man. When I think about what's going on now with the protests and all these new leaders that are emerging, the theme of Meteor Man was really, we have the power. Like once I lost my superpowers and I was just a mere mortal, that's when I became a real hero, because I said, I'll go down there and fight them with no powers. You're going to go down there? Yeah, because it's about the community. And then part of the thing with the community was we could band together and make a difference, but everybody is in their houses afraid and no one wants to speak up about what's going on in the community. So when I see the protests going on around the world globally, yeah, we did that. We came together, all of us, to say, let's make a difference. This violence, get your foot off my neck. So when I hit Meteor Man, the community really saves the day. It's not about the police. It's not about, the community says, you know what, we got to stand up because this brother is speaking his real truth. And so when you plant seeds like that, maybe there are people in neighborhoods that go, you know what, it's not anti-police, but how can we do better ourselves first? And I think that's the good thing that has come out of all this protest, is all these new leaders, new voices that are really speaking up that were probably afraid to speak up.
I think it's so awesome what you just said about the 5 Heartbeats being like a secret vehicle to introduce new images of you know, ways Black males can be, because you know, you're working to counteract stereotypes. A lot of Hollywood shuffles the same way, working to counteract stereotypes. I wanted to ask you, what effect do you think dismantling stereotypes in Hollywood movies, what effect do you think it has on the world at large?
Well, I mean, here's the thing. When you get on an elevator and a white woman may clutch her purse or look at you crazy in Walmart or wherever you are, part of that is based on the images that they've seen of Black men. So if they see the Black man that is like, you know, like, give me your purse, you know, and you see that again on every cop show, every TV show, they go in their head, Black, danger. And then now we got masks on too.
I know.
Right? It's kind of like, you can't see a person smile. So it's like, good morning, you know, like, take my wallet, you know. So I think it is years of, you know, it goes back to Birth of a Nation. You know, they planted seeds back then that the Black men are going to rape white women and do harm to the world. And so Hollywood does play a role in all of the stuff that we're going through, because if you see, you know, scary looking Black men on the screen all the time, and you see somebody, it doesn't care if they have a nice, you know, like, here's the thing in Atlanta that pissed me off the most was that Rashard was just a lovable drunk. He was like a Richard Pryor sketch drunk. He was like, officer, you know, I live down there, and if you just let me, and he was a lovable Richard. That was a Richard Pryor sketch that went wrong. And then all of a sudden he's running, his car is right there. What you could go, let the guy run, please. Run plate 90132, you know, and he's right there. To shoot that guy, I'm like going, you know, he wasn't even harmless. The thing that I would say is that you talk about what my son calls in sports muscle memory. When I watched that video, where it took the turn was they said, let's put the handcuffs on. And then that's when he went to George Floyd, like, oh my God, I might die right now. And he woke up out of sleepiness, out of drunk, to that. But he, you know, so that's why I'm saying stereotypes. The guy is a lovable drunk. He was just a guy who had too much to drink, and he was, and it's like comedy. He was so nice. Officer, excuse me, sir. I think very much. I live over there, and he was just being the nicest, and then they shot him. So I think the stereotypes play into all of that.
Yes, indeed. And I kind of wanted to jump off of that to, I guess, there's this comeuppance in a kind of a way. Like, a lot of people are, obviously there's an eye on representation and diversity in entertainment in the last couple of years, and it's taken on many different forms. There's been a lot of lip service to it, and some people are putting their money where their mouth is, and it's happening at this particular pace. We had Ernie Hudson on the show a couple days ago, and he's had a very long established career and has had to kind of jump around to what was available, and now there's this comeuppance, not only about being able to call people out, I guess, in some sense of how things went, but also that there are more and more Black voices that are out there making all kinds of stuff. And I guess I was curious about what your feelings about that are, like based on what you've seen and how it's changed. And then also I wanted to ask you a little bit about some of these films that are kind of being rethought, like Gone with the Wind. There are images that are being, recalled, like Aunt Jemima and stuff like that. Do you think that is going to actually cause any kind of difference, or do you think it's kind of a stunt or a combination of both?
I think it's a beautiful time for awareness. I think I applaud everybody that now is having some kind of sensitivity to these images. I was thinking about today, like Aunt Jemima, and that's like, when they did the photo shoot, did they have a stylist for her? It was like, it's just like, like she said, no, I want my hair like Bessie Smith. It's like, no, you don't put the rag on. You don't have the rag on. It's going to be perfect. They didn't give her a choice in how she looked, because I was reading, there was this thing online today, the woman was talking about how dare they take down Aunt Jemima. And part of the thing to me was that they wanted a certain image of us, like this woman in the kitchen cooking and hard working and all of that. And they said she was a, very rich woman for her recipe and all of that. But I think this is a good time in history, because what are we teaching our kids, and what do the images represent? Because there's a certain time where we go like, well, that's okay, that statue. That's okay, Aunt Jemima. Why couldn't she be fly? Why couldn't she look like an entrepreneur, like they did the ladies on Virginia Slim, and she had a certain look and swag? But if they say we want a certain image, we want to keep that image. So I really feel this is a good time right now. I see a lot of talented, content creators that are saying things, and I just see all these new voices being born. So for me, being a pioneer when, Keenan and I were fighting for images and just fighting to say what we had to say with no money, I think now is a beautiful time. I think what's coming out of this, like even with you guys right now having this conversation, this is beautiful that you guys have a platform that you're educating people, because I don't really say, bad guys, good guys, bad guys. I think there are people that need to be educated so that you can say, that's not cool. Like if the Washington Redskins is offensive to Native American people, change it. Don't go like, it's not offensive. It's like, no, if they're feeling sensitive, certain kind of way, take it down. When I hear the stuff about the Kung flu, to all Asian friends of mine, it is very offensive. Don't say it. You're going to start a fight in the wrong, So I just think that there is sensitivity training that needs to happen. And I think it comes out of action. And there's a lot of action going on right now because of all these protests, So I think this is a lot of good is going to come out of this.
You're, primarily known as a, filmmaker from the comedy world. So, if you look at Hollywood Shuffle, you look at Meteor Man, these are known as comedies. These are great comedies. Meteor Man was, I think, the biggest budget for a Black film, I think, at the time. And these are really, really funny movies. But in comedy, like, you're doing things that are funny but also have deep messages. But you have to compete in the comedy world next to the Gremlins and the, you know, Christmas Vacation or whatever, like films that don't have to have that kind of messaging. Did you ever find it difficult to balance being purely funny and having those deep and heavy messages that you're communicating so clearly in the work?
Well, you know, when you really look at my body of work, I've always wanted to be a chameleon, you know, as a director. Like if you see Baps and you go, Baps is funny and it's a comedy, or Jackie's Back is a certain kind of comedy. But then there's Holiday Heart that is strictly drama with a taste of comedy. And then there's 10,000 Black Men Named George. So for me, I've always been able to show my range as an artist, you know, so that, you know, when you watch my work, you know, it's like right now there's a documentary that I did on the 5 Heartbeats, making the 5 Heartbeats. And you get a master class with Robert Townsend. You get to see like, oh, this is how this cat really creates. I think for me, anytime I direct, it's always about getting the tone right. Like you have what we call a tone meeting. Like, is the comedy going to be like Hollywood Shuffle is more slapstick comedy when we get into the sketches. The comedy in the 5 Heartbeats is more heartfelt comedy where it's real and you can laugh. Meteor Man is, you know, superhero where it's unbelievable, the things, and he can talk to animals and he can fly, but there's a twist to it. So I think, you know, for me as an artist, it's always looking at getting the tone, whatever that tone is, to whatever the story or TV show is, getting it right.
Right.
Fantastic. I have 2 more questions for you. One question is 4 different questions.
Wow, that's a lot in one.
But I do want to ask you about this real quick because, yes, we're talking about what we call the Holy Trinity, or at least I call it the Holy Trinity. But those are, like, you've made many different films. You've also directed, and by the way, the documentary is on. Is it UMB?
It's everywhere. If you want to see Making the 5 Heartbeats,
it's great, by the way. It's fantastic.
iTunes, YouTube, it's everywhere. So you can just get it tonight.
There. It's out there. Go check it out. You also did a really great interview with Lena Waithe, where she talked to you about the documentary and kind of your process making that film. I also wanted to talk to you about, because you have directed a few comedy specials, in particular, a little comedy special called Eddie Murphy Raw. Now,
wow,
exactly. Now, that was a concert film, if I'm correct, right? That was like that's kind of a genre that doesn't really happen much anymore. A couple people have tried to do it. The homie Eddie Griffin has done such things. I think Cat Williams, Kevin Hart have done like concert films. But back then, Pryor kind of owned that idea of the concert film. And then here comes Eddie Murphy Raw, right? So we all know who Eddie Murphy was and all that stuff. But I guess I kind of want to ask you, as a person who was not only a friend of Eddie's, but also a stand-up comedian yourself, how did you decide how that was going to look? Because you kind of created a look for the comedy special that I think has continued to be copied in a lot of different ways. It's very influential. And so I guess I was thinking, like, how did you decide how to shoot that? Like, what was it that what were your priorities when you were trying to capture that comedy special?
Well, when you have Eddie Murphy, and Eddie is a comedy, he's one of the comedy gods, you know. I mean, he's Richard Pryor, Eddie Murphy. It's in that other lane. You want to capture his material and make sure you don't miss anything, because this man has 100 characters. He can go in and out. He's physical, he's verbal, you know, he's making, you know, reactions. And so it was really like being on the road with Eddie and just studying what, you know, he was going to do and how he was going to do it. Ernest Dickerson was the DP on that. And Ernest really brought the look, because, you know, we shot with film, and so we wanted to have a film look. But at that time, Richard Pryor's live in concert was the concert film
standard.
To beat. That was the standard. And so we just attacked, you know, it, you know, to do the best. But when you got Eddie Murphy, my job was really, really easy. You know, I would tweak him a little bit, but his instincts are amazing. And it's just we shot for 2 nights, and you're talking comedy gold, you know. And the beautiful thing about Eddie that I've got to say is that he had a very unique voice. Not many comedians have a unique comedy voice and just are fearless, and Eddie is beyond fearless. I mean, he was back then and he still is to this day.
Well, I'll be in touch with you about my special. I'm not even joking. You heard it here. Baron Vaughn, Robert Townsend. It's a collaboration. We doing things. So I lied. I have 2 more questions now. I do want to ask you about Parenthood as well. The Parenthood.
Yes.
That is a show where you wore so many different hats. You know, you were starring in it. You co-created it. I think you were writing episodes, you were directing episodes, you were doing every single thing on that show. What, having come out of film, what was that like for you?
Well, again, that was a Trojan horse for Robert Townsend, because the reason I created the Parenthood was that kids, you know, when I think about kids of color, you know, there was a time television was the babysitter, and you wanted to sit a kid in front of a TV and they would get these life lessons. And then television turned upside down and there was all this negative, crazy stuff. So when I created the Parenthood, it was to give simple lessons to kids that look like me, so that they, you know, if they didn't have a parent in the house, they could turn on the Parenthood and they could get life lessons through Cece or Zaria or Nicholas. And in my mind, I was going to raise a whole generation of kids, and then people would say, Robert Townsend, you know, Mr. Peterson is my dad, and I'm learning different life skills and life lessons through this show. So that was the whole reason why I did the Parenthood. And now when kids come up to me that are young adults now and go, you know, you was my daddy. You know, when I watched that show, you was my daddy. I learned so much about life and that was why I had to be in the writer's room. That's why every script, every line, the kids, I didn't want them to be disrespectful, but I wanted to let them know this is how life should or could be.
I was reading this interview with you, and you have this quote that says, I'm this kid from the hood who didn't go to film school, who never directed anything until he directed his first movie. How did he do it? And that's my question to you. How did you do that?
You know, let me say, you know, it's one part being fearless. Like for this generation now, let me say this, because people say, you know, Rob, if you could switch places and you were a filmmaker now, what would you do? You know, what would stop you? And the only thing that's going to stop this generation is fear. You know, and the reason I say that is because you can make a movie with an iPhone. You can edit on your computer. When Keenan and I were doing Hollywood Shuffle, we had to shoot with leftover film for 35mm cameras. We had to rent the camera. We had to rent the editing room and all of that. And now the only thing that will stop, you know, this generation is going to be fear. So when I said to Keenan, I had a really bad audition, and it was some real stereotypical stuff, kind of like in Hollywood Shuffle. The guy was like, stick your butt out. You know, and he was telling me all this stuff. And you're a bad mofo. And he was showing me how to be black.
Yeah.
And I was so mad that day. I said, Keenan, we got to make our own movies. We got to make our own movies. And Keenan was like, Rob, you didn't go to film school. You never. And I said, we're going to die doing this crap. And then Keenan goes, you know, and this is where you talk about ride or die, you know, your boy that's like got your back. Keenan was like, Rob, you ain't never made a movie, but I believe in you. We could do this. And that's amazing. When we started. So it was like just me and him against the world, and we won.
Fantastic. Well, in that tradition of, again, community, collaboration, stuff like that, friendship, my last question is me actually yielding it to a couple of young comedians who are fans of yours that I love. So the first one is from David Perdue. Shout out to Atlanta's David Perdue. He actually had met you on the set of Love Is. He had worked on that show, and he said that you had asked him to write 20 jokes for a bit because you didn't know he was a stand-up. And he said that he had written some stuff and you laughed at it, and he felt like $1 million because Robert Townsend laughed at his jokes. And then by the end of the day, he had written 20 jokes and he showed them to you, and you're like, oh, you didn't have to do that. And so the question is, why'd you make him do that? No, not really.
Well, you know, can I say something? It's
yes.
funny because he's playing a writer on a TV show.
Yes, yes.
As a technique, I would say, don't pretend you're a writer, really write some jokes, because we're in a room and I'm shooting and there's a long table and it's like a writer's room and nobody has nothing on their pads. And I'm like going, pretend like we're writing a show, guys, think of a joke. And so then when I said write the jokes, I saw him come alive as an actor. So when I said really write the jokes, then instead of like being on camera going, he started to like go, oh yeah,
he was really writing jokes. Yeah.
So then when I had the cutaways on him, it was money because he was really thinking like a comedian and a writer. And then at the end of the day, the exercise was him to work his muscles, because if he's pretending like I'm writing, you know, it looks fake. And he's a really funny dude. He really wrote some funny stuff. So I was just like, wow, you know, but here's the thing, you guys are the new generation and whatever I can impart, I'm here to do. So, but he did some great work on the show.
Fantastic. Next question. Io Debary. Io is a very funny young writer who she works on a bunch of different TV shows around. She wanted to ask if there are any, speaking of new generation, if there are any young Black artists, comedians, filmmakers that are exciting you right now.
There's a lot of different, you know, who makes me laugh. And it's like, I like Twitter, you know, the Instagram comedians that make me laugh that I think are really funny. Haha makes me laugh. Little Duval makes me laugh. Ace Vane. A lot of cats that I just think have really crazy sense of humor. So, you know, it's just different people. And I just like a unique point of view and coming up with something like really silly. So.
And the last question, I'm kind of combining some questions here because I want to give a shout out to Troy Walker and Shalewa Sharp, who are also homies. Troy is out of Denver. Well, he lives here, but he's from Denver. Shalewa was from Atlanta. This is combining their questions. It's just kind of what are your thoughts on how to use humor to process all of these different kinds of things that happen to us, all this trauma, all this drama, and all this diorama?
Well, you know, the thing that I would say is that because I am a student of Richard Pryor, there is a lot of comedy in what's going on right now. And I think what I learned from Richard Pryor was that there is a way to take comedy, say something about a tragic situation in a funny way, find the right point of view into the joke, whatever that joke is, and it could heal people. Comedy is the biggest medicine you can give a person, because laughing has been proven to heal. And so I just think we can go crazy looking at what's going on in the world, or we can say, okay, how do I do my part as an artist? How do I educate people and say, you know what was messed up about this situation? Yeah, brother died. Like when I saw the whole thing with George Floyd, the most disturbing thing for me was that the cop's hands was in his pocket. And I was like, wow, his hands are in his pocket. And that was, as a director, I was like going, oh, interesting. You know, his hand is in his pocket. So he's just relaxed.
Casual.
Casual. This is everyday business. So our job as artists is to find that unique perspective, to find the comedy that can heal. Like Richard Pryor, when Richard Pryor would do stuff and he says, you know, you ever be the only Black person at a party and white people are real funky? Hey, you're taking too much air here. And
yeah. Taking up all the area. Yeah.
You're taking the whole area, you know, and the way he would do it, it made you laugh, but then it made you think. And so part of the good news and the bad news right now with young creators is that everybody has a camera. That's the good news. And the bad news is that everybody has a camera.
Right.
Because you know, because there's a lot of stuff, and we have to be careful because there's a lot of black on black film and television crime going on, and it's created by people that look like us. So that's where sometimes we got to be kind of careful.
Fantastic. Robert Townsend, thank you so much for being here. When this pandemic is over, my people will be in touch with you about the special. Mike, you got anything to say to Robert Townsend?
I just want to say, you know, we live in a moment where we often don't get a chance to give our legends their flowers, you know. So I want to call you a legend to your computer face. And just, you know, thank you for a lifetime's worth of work, and I still have more to dig into and continue to process. So just thank you for that.
Hey man, thank you guys so much for having me today. And like I said, just meeting your energies through this, and I got to thank you guys for all the shout outs on Vulture and everything. I just appreciate you, man. Just fly higher, fly higher, fly higher, spread your wings.
Oh, yes.
That's a beautiful thing.
Oh, Robert Townsend, everybody. What a show. What a show.
Yeah, it's incredible.
You can follow Robert Townsend on Twitter at Robert_Townsend. I mean, come on, Mike.
That was amazing,
Townsend, man.
Absolutely amazing, man.
Oh man,
but it's a testament.
Townsend.
You know, I gotta shout out the people who help us put this show together, from Blavity and Funny or Die, because this show was just an idea that we kicked around 2.5 weeks ago, and then to get to this point, we're able to have somebody like that on this show with a conversation that not only we get to participate in, but we get to share with the world too. It's amazing that this has been able to come together like this.
I can't agree with you more, and that's going to be the thoughts that we go out on today. Tomorrow we have a really fantastic show. Give it up one more time for I say that expecting to hear applause from nowhere. Give it up one more time for Robert Townsend, Diallo, Riddle, and Jeremiah Ellison, everybody. They sing so beautifully, don't you agree? Tomorrow we are actually going to have a little discussion about tech and innovation from the Black point of view. Black people who have been a part of tech, media, innovation for a bit. They have such amazing things to say, and our guests include Van Lathan and Morgan DeBaun of Blavity, and the homie Baratunde Thurston. So we're going to talk that stuff tomorrow, and for now, this is it.
Peace, y'all.
For now, this is it.